Hi everyone, it's Joey, and you know it's really late because I'm talking in a really low voice. um, I've been spending over an hour, I want to say almost 2 hours working on the Lego room in general, and especially working on Studside Heights, my Lego beach town. So this is a reduced version. Before I moved, I had another 3-4 feet of table to work with. But in this space, I'm just adjusting things over time. Several months ago, I was really working more on this, but then I had other obligations, went to those first, and hey, I'm recording this on Christmas, so happy holidays. Merry Christmas. After festivities today, I got to some work on this, then clean things up, because it was really messy, and it's getting better. It may not look different, it may not look much different from before, but it is actually significantly getting better. And I don't just mean in the table, but I mean in the room in general. A couple areas were organized. There was a whole Sterilite drawer thing here that I was able to move and have a better spot for it so I can actually use more of this side of the table, which is great. But one of the best things about moving forward on the Studside Heights, the beach town itself, is about the track. Because if you've ever planned a Lego town, you would know it is very difficult to plan with trains, especially in a small space. Trains take up a lot of room, even though the physical track doesn't seem like it was, but the perimeter of it takes up a lot of space. So you really have to figure out all that, in association with the roads, and if you want walkways and housing and whatever else surrounding your Lego town. So months ago, I came up with how this was all going to work out, making a simple oval with the roads, a simple oval with the track. Yes, I know it's inconsistent about the colors of the road plates, but it works. It technically works, because there are some of these that are crossroads, they have walkways, and those walkways can help with certain buildings if they need, driving around, which is good. It's fine. Now, from there, and it was also whatever I had available. Some colors just don't exist for some roads, and I didn't have them all to be the same. I also kind of like it being more greenish over here, so it's more natural, and this being a grayish to tan area because it's closest to the beach, Anyways, and yeah, there's a beach over there, and there's a little bit of ocean. In my previous setup, I had a lot of ocean that I didn't ever use. So I actually realized, as a beach town, it doesn't need the ocean as much. So there's still room for it. There's still things that will be there that can be put up there. Not what's there right now, but, it doesn't need giant base plates worth like it did before, which is great. I'm not going to need that many things happening at sea as opposed to on the beach, which is fine. So one of the biggest things as far as the roads and rails go is lining up the rails and just having them properly fit onto the road base plates. I don't know how many other people do this, but for me personally, I've done this several times, in which I would add plates underneath the rails so that it actually connects onto the base plates and therefore keeps them sturdy so it doesn't shift around as the train's moving around. And it also helps keep the base plates secure with each other, because there are some areas that I will be able to move buildings back and forth or adjust things here and there much easier than, just having certain base plates. But I also want them to be stable when everything else needs to move. So that's good that some of these are actually tied down in some good ways. Like there's a whole section of sidewalk in gray that goes around the buildings. So yeah, and I'm used to having small space for buildings and footprint, and I'm also used to having buildings taken in and out over time, like, oh, it's new management, oh, it's another construction project or whatever, This one being the stable because it's the it's the most important things: the police, fire, and ambulance, emergency stuff. The police and fire on the other side is actually morphed into one building. They used to actually be two separate buildings with the same footprint, and just having a little bit more space around them. But this works way better. It fully utilizes the base plate that it's on, as opposed to the other ones where it's just kind of like dead space. And it also Empties out into the road very nicely on either side of it. That's why the crossroads are there. But also, I get to restructure some of how these rooms look. And some of that I'm still doing for the police and fire stuff. But I've also been working on that with adding different styles of things, like these windows. I like this window style. I would love to use this, and it would make the building stand out more instead of being so cubish. There's little features here and there, but it also helps on the other side if there's stuff. Anywho, because I don't even know if it's going to be hospital facing outward or it's going to be towards the back. That can move. That's fine. So, rails. Originally, I know a lot of people, when they do rail work for the Lego towns, they will add ballasting, which is a series of details on the top and bottom of the rails, basically, in layman's terms, adding things along the railroad ties up here, changing colors of things. They usually have some gravel or something underneath the rails. I'm not doing that. It's a lot of pieces, and I never really wanted to go full force with that. So what I did for a while, in my old Studside Heights setup, I would just lay off the railroad ties. So I'd just have black plates, because I had an abundance of them, and many pick-a-brick cups full of, plates like that were easy to use and add in everywhere. Just covering up all of these. So it just made them black railroad ties. I looked at this today after a while of absence from this whole area, from almost the whole Lego room, and I was like, no, I'm not feeling that anymore. I like that it just goes back to this, just plain, goes with the gray kind of thing, and I could always use this the black plates somewhere else. So I peeled them up across the whole thing, which is a lot to take care of. And there were some of them that I still kept on there just to keep underneath, so it actually ties them onto the base plates like I said earlier. I've also run some tests with the trains, and it's even getting better that way too. Now that passenger train in the back is actually 2 copies of the set that are just elongated so that it's a big snaking double-ended train. Because normally it would just give you boop, boop, and boop. 2 passenger-like cars and 1 engine. And a really long nose in the end of that engine that I had to do several measurements around it. Especially for this area, it's going to become a train tunnel. For those who don't know, I will catch up on that in just a little bit. But the basic thing here is I want to have this on a 9-volt train track, so it has the most versatility. If I wanted to use 9 volts, if I wanted to use power functions, if I wanted to use Powered Up, which is the one that came with this passenger train in the set. And I have 2 other trains that I could use. They're a little bit smaller. So this is the biggest one, not in length, but also in height, and the nose stretching out the furthest from the track. So I had to test this one the most. And if I know that this works, everything else will work, because they're smaller. And guess what? It does. I also made sure that the speed regulator was in a good spot so I could actually reach it, because otherwise, wouldn't really have a good place to put it. Basically, would put it on the floor. It wouldn't work that well. So I was like, hey, I'll just incorporate it into the layout. Put it right here. It has a stud receiving underneath, so I could just attach it onto the base plate. And I moved the track just enough so it'll be out of the way, even with the long nose of the passenger train. I also adapted the passenger train to have a 9-volt motor underneath, and it's doing pretty well. Like, I'm surprised, even without the highest setting of speed, this can carry 4 cars easily. Like, it'll probably do better if I add another motor onto it, as I've seen in other train layouts, where it gets like a long chain of cars. They just add a second motor to pull it along better. But for right now, I like it. I could add that on a little bit later, but I didn't add it on right now because I didn't have the second pair of wheels to replace it, since that's the car that usually hosts the motor, and the motor wouldn't really help with this layout until I find a 9-volt again. I have one buried somewhere. I figured I'll just leave it off, see how this does, and this is still good. Again, I'm testing it at what I consider its limit, what I most maximum would need for it. And I can trim it down and it'll still be good. So I could have this passenger train running 2 of the cars, and that'll be fine. It'll work well. See? does not make contact with the regulator. And it works in reverse too, which I'm really happy about, that it can work both ways. Yeah, it might have a little more push to it, but it doesn't need to be a super fast passenger train. It needs to be enough to still circulate without wearing thin, you know, or just stopping momentum. I'm also glad that the 9-volt track works, because I've had some issues before with certain track pieces, that they don't make as much contact, especially being over 20 years old. Maybe even more than that, honestly. So I'm happy that all of the facilities are working, because now I can move on to the next big step, the train tunnel. And basically all that's about